This is Kate Marope, and you're listening to Path to Print. This week, we have our first guest episode on a segment that I like to fondly call Convos on Craft. Convos on Craft episodes are all about peeling back the curtain and getting into the nitty-gritty of how you put together your story from the developmental side of things. Me and my guests will talk about process, book stats, resources, and advice to help you grow into the amazing author I know you already are. Today, I'm joined by an amazing author, someone who is an auto-buy and comfort read author for me. Seriously, as soon as I knew this quarter's topic would be about setups, she was the first person I thought of asking to talk about opening your book with iconic character moments. She believes in romance, happily ever afters, and the faith it takes for her characters to get there. She bleeds coffee, thinks chocolate should be its own food group, and currently lives in Kentucky with a 5-pound furry ninja that protects her from baby birds, spiders, and neighbors' dogs. Welcome to the podcast, Mary Calme. So before we jump right in, I just want to ask you, or I want to hear all about your writing process and kind of like talk me through how you go around like approaching writing your book, whether you're a planner or do you just pants it, or what's your process?
Yes. Unfortunately, that's me. I'm a pantser. And so everybody's always like, whenever I tell like Macy Blake or Charlie Cochet, whenever I say I'm stuck, they're like, oh, where are you in the plot, right? Where are you in your schedule? I'm like, no.
There is no schedule.
No. What? What? So no. The true trauma for writing with me is figuring out the names of my people. So I have to have the name, right? Because I'm a big believer in that you have to have a regular name. And then you have a fancy name, okay? You can't have two people named like Kyrian and, Blaze. It's just not going to work. It has to be, usually in most relationships, like my name is Mary. My husband's name is Juneau, like the capital of Alaska. Very fancy, right? And that's why we have Jory, which is a little foo-foo, and Sam, right? And Logan, which is very plain, and Jin. So it always has, so my process begins with finding these names that are very the normal guy or whatever. So like the latest book is Shaw James, and Shaw is sort of a fancy name, and the other person's name is Benji Grace. So Benji is a name that we've all heard, right? You probably don't know as many Shaws, right? So that's my whole process. Then once I have the names, I'm like, okay, now what? I mean, I have a general idea clearly of what it is. Like when you're writing a shifter romance, if you're writing, like when I wrote All Kinds of Tied Down, I had an idea, like Miro has the fancy name and Ian has the boring name, right? And I had a very specific idea that this was a friends to lovers book. And so I knew that I wanted it to take a certain amount of time for them to actually, finally see that they were supposed to be more than friends. Mm-hmm. But that's the extent of Mary's writing process.
It's funny that you mentioned All Kinds of Tie Down, because I think the opening chapter is like one of my favorite of yours. Like seriously, particularly in the audio, it's amazing and I love it, and it gives me all kinds of warms and fuzzies, and I like. Would you mind if I shared like that like opening bit, like paragraph of the audio with the listeners? Okay, cool. Because like I think everybody deserves to experience it because it's so fantastic, right?
Chapter 1. Running. All our interactions with suspects ended the same way. I would say, hey, let's wait for backup or a warrant. I'd mention we didn't have probable cause, and sometimes I would even go so far as to point out we weren't armed, because it was our damn day off. Not that he ever listened. The chase was always on seconds after I spoke. The fact that he even stopped to listen to me before acting stunned most people who knew us. Please, I would beg him. Just this once. And then I'd get the head tip or the shrug or the grin that crinkled his pale blue eyes in half before he'd explode into action, the velocity of movement utterly breathtaking. Watching him run was a treat. I just wished I was always following him into the path of whizzing bullets, speeding cars, or flying fists. Since I'd become his partner, the number of scars on my body had doubled. I considered it a win if I got Ian Doyle to put on a Kevlar vest before he kicked down a door or charged headfirst into the unknown. I saw the looks we got from the other marshals when we returned with bloodied suspects, recaptured felons, or secured witnesses, and over the years they had changed, from respect for Ian to sympathy for me. When I was first partnered with him, some of the other marshals were confused about it. Why was the new guy, me, being partnered with the ex-Special Forces soldier, the Green Beret? How did that make sense? I think they thought I got an unfair advantage and that getting him as a partner was like winning the lottery. I was the newest marshal, low man on the totem pole. So how did I rate Captain America? What everyone missed was that Ian didn't come from a police background like most of us. He came from the military and wasn't versed in proper police procedure or adherence to the letter of the law. As the newest marshal on the team, I was the one who had the book memorized the best, so the supervisory deputy, my boss, assigned me to him. It actually made sense. Lucky me. Doyle was a nightmare, and while I wasn't a Boy Scout, in comparison to my shoot-first, ask-questions-later partner, I came off as calm and rational. After the first 6 months, everyone stopped looking at me with envy and switched to pity. Now, going on 3 years, marshals in my field office would bring me an ice pack, pass me whatever pharmaceuticals they had in their desks, and even occasionally offer advice. It was always the same. For Christ's sakes, Jones, you need to talk to the boss about him. My boss, Supervisory Deputy Sam Cage, recently called me into his office and asked me flat out if there was any truth to the rumors he was hearing. Did I want a change of partner? The blank stare I gave him hopefully conveyed my confusion. So it was no one's fault but my own that I was running in the slushy, melting snow down the 4700 block of 95th Street in Oaklawn at 10 on a cold Tuesday morning in mid-January. Arms pumping, Glock 20 in my hand, I saw Ian motion to the left. So I veered off and leaped an overturned garbage can as I headed into an alley. I should have been the one on the street. My partner was better at leaping and running up walls like a ninja. Even though I was younger than his 36 by 5 years, at 6'2" and 185 pounds, he was in much better shape than me. While he was all lean, carved muscle with 8-pack abs and arms that made women itch to touch, I was built heavier at 5'11", with bulky muscle and wide shoulders, more bull than panther. Ian had a sleek, fluid way about him. I was all sharp angles and herky-jerky motion. We were as different as we could be, though people often commented that we had a really similar irritating way of carrying ourselves when together. An unmistakable strut. But I would have known if I was doing that, if I pulled up when I walked beside my partner. No way I swaggered and didn't notice. The second I emerged from the trash-strewn alley, I was hit by a 250-pound freight train of a man and smashed onto the pavement under him. Ooh!
And my next question for you was going to be like, how did you choose to start with that particular moment, right? Like, it's in the middle of a chase scene, but then you have a lot of internal narrative around how they got into that situation, and there's like a lot of context giving that really like should be distracting, but it's like we know he's running as he's doing it, so you have that momentum and it's awesome. So like, was that, first of all, was that the first opening you had for that book, or did that opening come like later on? And then secondly, like, how did you land on that moment and you're like, yeah, this is the good, these are the goods?
Well, because the all kinds of tied down books, because the Marshall books are action books, right? They're action adventure books. I try and if you look through the series so far, I have 2 more to write. If you look through the series so far, they all start with an action sequence of some kind, so that you're sort of in the middle of the action as soon as you open the book. That's very important to me. So it just starts. I'm not a big lover of books. My sister is she used to devour those James A. Michener books, and don't get me wrong, Michener's, he's a god, but that whole, where you start with the protozoa and you get to, the people in the book, like what, 150, I can't. So I try and start with those action sequences right away, so that the reader is immersed in the world right away. So and then, because it's in first person, you're not going to have all of the what's happening in the scene. You're going to have only what's in Miro's head. So in Miro's head, what's happening at that moment. In the 4th book, where he's running and he's focusing on this boss and keeping up with him, and he's got that chatter in his ear the whole time. Everybody, are you keeping an eye on him? Do you know where he is? Did you see him? Are you right there? You didn't lose him.
He's like, I'm trying to focus.
And he's like, oh dear God, and he's running at the same time, and over the car, and of course Sam does the Dukes of Hazzard thing right over the car, and Miro goes around.
Yeah, he's like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, he's like, I'm not doing that. I'm not a freaking, Luke Duke over here, and he's just running. And so I think those pieces are just super important, and I wanted to show that these are active guys. They're visceral men, you know what I mean, that they have to, they're it's like when Miro tackles like you were saying, the guy in the book, when he tackles him, that's very important to show that yes, he's thoughtful, yes, he's kind, he's also can be a very scary marshal, right? It's not like he doesn't kick down doors himself. Just because Ian's usually the first guy through doesn't mean that Miro cannot offer his own sort of, the gravitas of the situation. So that was important to me.
Yeah, and I love how you actually show that he's got that awareness of himself, because like he describes himself like a bull through a china shop, and he's like, we are both powerful, but like in very different ways. So like he's like the one people notice first, and then I'm the one who comes in like the wrecking ball afterwards.
Yes. And Miro's like, hey, it's okay. But if somebody comes at him, he has to be able to put them down himself,
Yeah.
So
that's amazing. I love that.
Yeah. Yes.
And I like love this foreshadowing you did, like kind of, because you start the book with Miro kind of like showing the reader what Ian is like, and not just from his own perspective, but like the people around him. So Sam is there kind of like, is he problematic for you, or is everybody just, talking nonsense? And everybody else is like, dude, run away from him, like run quick, because he's going to get you dead quick. And I think that was like a really sweet way to foreshadow that like Miro's this very balanced and very empathetic person. So he doesn't just see one side of the story, like, which is his point of view. He's always kind of giving that, like thinking things through from other people's perspectives, and then kind of like making an informed choice of like, I'm going to try to do what's good for everybody. Right. And I like love that you did that, because like it foreshadows what like his career shift at like in the last book.
At the end. Yes. It's interesting to me because a lot of people say to me, oh, is that book in first person? I hear that a lot. Oh, I didn't know that book was in first person. And I think when you say first person to people, they sort of think it's going to be all this deep POV, introspection kind of thing. You know what I mean? Where you're not going to get a lot of different, points of view and things like that. And so when I do my first person, I try and make sure that, people always say, "Oh, I'd love to have a book from Ian's point of view," and I try and think, what would that be? Or I always want a book from, like Sam's point of view. What would that be? That would be a lot of sit, go, quiet, stop. I mean, that's what Sam's point of view would be. There'd be a lot of, you know what I mean? It won't be as interactive, I think, as people think it would be, and I think the same thing would be Ian. When I first turned that book in, my editor at the time, she said, he's basically monosyllabic. We need to give him a little more. But I really wanted to show how closed he was at the beginning. And then, book 2, there's more talking. Book 3, there's even more talking, but there needed to be that sort of buildup. But I ended up having to, give him some more talking pieces, at least earlier.
Well, I like to think that Ian does a lot of his talking through his body language. And like in that opening scene, because like Miro's like laid flat out right after he got tackled, and like he's there casually like, nice tackle, and that was it. And then like that second where like Miro tries to get up and like he realizes that he's broken some bones, and then like his body, like you have Ian's body change like in response to that. Like so he's clearly in tune and he's paying attention even if he's not talking all the time. So like, yeah, those are the things I noticed, and I really appreciate it because as a reader, I was like, oh, he's so sweet. Like I never thought of him as closed emotionally, but maybe like he's not as communicative.
Yes, exactly. And see, it's so great because readers like you, I mean, it's amazing that you can picture, and pick up all the nuances. And some people don't, they read quick and they don't read in depth, and that's okay. Everybody has a different reading style, but you try and write the nuances. One of my my editor also said, in every scene you should try and see if you can do the 5 senses, right? So have you your reader, your character has to see it, smell it, taste something, or touch it, so that you can have all those different things per scene, so that you make sure all those facets are in there. So work hard to try and make that happen.
So what resources would you recommend to somebody who's trying to like nail those opening chapters and kind of figure out, or maybe help them figure out who their characters are and kind of investigate where their story is going to be?
Oh goodness. I I have I have so many books. If I get, if I could show you the wall of books here, the emotional thesaurus, and I mean, all these great books. But I've always found that the best resource for sort of finding your voice is reading other people, and I don't say that like not to copy or not to do that, but to see like what what they're doing, and what they're, you know how they're framing things, and I mean, I'm a voracious reader. My friends always say, I don't know how you have time to read and to write. Well, if you don't read, you can't write. It's it's very important, because you have to see. I'm always amazed when I read, um, you know, something from one of the authors I follow, and I'm just like, oh, that's a beautiful way to say that, or whatever. And of course we all have our favorite authors, but I really feel like finding your own voice comes from reading, classics, from reading all the different genres that you enjoy. I specifically do not enjoy writing science fiction. I've written one novella. Period. That's it. I'm done. I don't have the scope. It's not in my wheelhouse to do. High fantasy also. not in my wheelhouse to do. I'm amazed at the people who can do it. I'm also a little amazed at the people who can read it. I mean, my husband loves high fantasy. Whenever I go to the bookstore to get a book, I'm always like, I'll come home and I'll say, this looks good. Plus, there's a map, right? When there's a map in the front of the book, ooh, that's a good fantasy book, right? Because they need a map. And so I'll always show him that. He's like, ooh, a map, So, but I really do. I think the best resource is to read. Just read, everybody. Read as much as you can, because in there, then you'll find out. It's as important to know what you don't want to do as what you do want to do. And I really do think that pathway is the way to do it. I think because I'm a pantser, I don't have as many like resource specifically that I can point to say that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm sure that when you have all the guests that I'm sure you'll have on the show will be able to say, well, I use this and this is what I use, and and I'm sure that'll be very helpful to a lot of
Well,
writers.
no, I have like a lot of author friends, and part of the reason I started this podcast was everybody's like, oh, everybody's telling me I should like do the story structure and the 3-act this, and then there's this, and save the cat, and then all the things come like thrown at them, and they're like, I just want to write a story, and like I do all of that other stuff like kind of intuitively. So I always find it interesting to like see what kind of author somebody is based on like whether or not they're like very like got the formula, and if they don't have their plan all set up before, they can't even start to write, because I have friends like that. But also like just the intuitive writers who are just like, okay, this is how it's going to go, and then I'm going to like discover where it takes me, and if we take a turn, we take a turn.
And I agree. I got a really sweet note, from another author not too long ago, and she said that she wanted to write fan fiction in my Lange world, because she loved the idea of the sanctuary so much, and she was going to write fan fiction. She wasn't going to publish it, but she just wanted to know if that was okay. And I said, I really appreciate that you're talking to me and asking me, what about that did you like so much? And she said, oh, I love the idea of sanctuary for the shifters and all that. And I said, it's a trope. Do you know that it's a trope? And she didn't. She had no idea it was a trope. And it was very sweet. And I love the idea that she thought it came specifically from me, that I was the one who, was blessed with the idea of the sanctuary. And I said, no, it's a trope. And that part is a part that fascinates me, especially when I talk to newer writers, and I'm like, well, yeah, but it's a trope. And they're like, what? Like the teacher trope, the friends to lovers trope, the enemies to lover. These are tropes. These are things, and they're always like, yeah. So now she's like, so I could write my own sanctuary story? I said, absolutely.
Go for it.
Really? And she was, and it was adorable, and she was so sweet. But it was like the door swung open, because she could write her own people. She could have her own reason for these people being together. She could have her own reason, and I loved that. It's just, but I think that's a lot of that comes from, if you don't have a background in literature, right? If you haven't had to read, if you didn't, either in school or whatever, you miss sort of the trope discussion. And I think a lot of authors would benefit from, or newer authors would benefit from, like, just researching what tropes, because they might find some even that they didn't know of that they would love to write in.
Yeah.
It goes to your point, which is, you should write, your intuitive writers, you write for what you want. Wasn't it Maya Angelou? I want to say it was Maya Angelou said, if the story isn't, I'm misquoting, but if the story isn't there, that you want to read, write that story, So I think that's where everybody should start.
Yeah. It's like very interesting you bring up the point, particularly for newer authors, because I always feel like openings are things that get better with time as you get more acquainted with your author
I agree.
voice. And like a lot of the advice you get, like, don't start with these kinds of scenes, kind of falls to the wayside once you're an established author, because I think you're coming from a point of view where you're like, I know why I'm writing this particular scene and how it makes sense in the greater context of the story. And therefore, it doesn't feel like it's a cliche at that point, right? Like the opening dream sequence, or like, I don't know, the opening to the Hunger Games, where Katniss is like waking up and going to get food, like, you know, this seemingly mundane thing, but it has a purpose in that like kind of circumstance. And I think that's something that develops with time.
I agree. I mean, there's the, you know, the list of do nots, like do not have your character walk into the bathroom, look at themselves and describe themselves. I would concur with that. You know what I mean? There are specific things, but it's like Amy Lane, she teaches like a world building class, and one of the things she always says is, when your character gets out of bed and kicks something, what do they say? Do they say, "Oh, by the gods of whatever"? Then, you know, and they're angry. Then you know, oh, that's a fantasy. If they kick it and say, "God freaking damn it," then you know, okay, you're probably in a contemporary, right? So something as simple as that can set the tone for whatever it is you're writing. You know, um, I do like to keep my openings to things that are much more, you know, action based, or, um, you know, like with the Taurus series, I'm doing one opening in the office, the next one out of the office, the next one in the office, the next one out of the office. You know what I mean? So that you get, you want, they're each they're each changed up, but the point of like being in the office is the camaraderie and the banter and all that stuff, and being out of the office, you're sort of in the middle of what's going on, even if you have the flashback to the office, you know, so you still have these people and you know who's in the story as they move forward, especially since it's a series and you're following each of the men. So yeah. So that's how I like to do mine.
I love that. So, speaking of Taurus,
Yeah.
I think part of the most interesting thing about like the way you were just describing of like moving, like having that either flashback or open to the office scene, is that I think it kind of grounds the series in a place of familiarity, right? Like they have that same group of people. Well, I mean, the group changes with time, but like it's like familiar faces right at the beginning. And normally, of course, there's some comment about their boss and like how they all think he's a little bit crazy, and like they won't ever say it to his face.
A little scary. Little man's just a little bit scary.
They're like,
Yeah.
they're like, he has a great heart, but he's a little crazy and very scary.
But see, that's the same thing with the Marshalls. When I started writing the Marshalls and I had Miro and Ian, I was like, wait now. I had Sam was going to be a Marshall, and that's time has passed. So I bet I could make Sam Cage their boss, right? And so in that first book, and suddenly there's Sam Cage, you know, I got so many lovely letters from people like, oh my God, it's Sam, you know, and there's that familiarity, exactly what you're saying. Everybody knows Sam. They know Sam. And so it already grounds, you know, and if you're a new reader, that's fine. You want to learn about Sam, you know, but for readers who have, you know, been with me, they already know the kind of man Sam Cage is, so they know the kind of office he's running, so you know immediately about the people who work for him, because he wouldn't have people who work for him who didn't, you know. That's why in the fourth book, when he had, you know, unfortunately let somebody else hire that horrible woman, you know, who took care of custodial Witzek, he was so, you know, and he even brought it home, so that in the newsletter you got what it was like at home for his family to have to deal with him through that situation, because for him it's such a failing, and plus it had to do with kids. But you understand that that's who Sam Cage is, and so again it gives familiarity to the people who work for him directly. So
I love that you mentioned your newsletter, because he said is the highlight of my month. Every month on the 15th, I'm like, is it time yet? Because like time difference suck. And I'm like, is it time yet? Is it time yet? And then I check my newsletter and I love it. And it's like, I'm so impressed with like how you keep the timeline continuous, because I would completely fail at that. Completely.
Well, plot math is not my friend. Whenever I have to figure out how old somebody's parent would be when they were born, and it gets a little dicey, because I did not do well in math. I almost didn't graduate from college because of statistics. It took a bad turn, and it was either like you could take whatever it was, like geometry or statistics, and geometry was really not happening, so it had to be statistics. And I think I got like a C minus. She was very kind, just so I could like get out of college. But so me and math, it's just bad. Whenever somebody edits me, my friend Lisa, she's like, Mayor, I think his mom would have been like 12 when she had him, so we really need to fix this timeline. I'm like,
so you have your own timekeeper there, like being like, fix it.
Yeah, okay. And it's funny because people are always like, oh, I don't think Hannah's as old as you think she is, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, keep in mind that Hannah was adopted when she was 3. Oh, that's right. It's adorable. I'm like, listen, I have it written down specifically. I know exactly how old those kids are.
That's exactly what I was going to next, because I was like, not only are you having to keep the story progressing and like you're not writing it like continuously as like one book or at least a series, right? Where you spend like a lot of time with it. So it's like these check-ins and you're popping in and out of the timeline, right? But also you have the kids growing up and like having to like keep like their developmental markers like accurate for their age, but also like within their character, and like Hannah's faith and like what she's doing there. It's just like so lovely to see. And I'm like, but that must be a lot of work to keep track of. And then like I saw like Courtney in like your Facebook group was like, I'm trying to keep up with the list with all like the like Easter eggs that you do across the series, so that like people who are like, oh yeah, I want to learn about that other character that I was really intrigued by, and like can pop in.
It's always nice when people are like, oh my God, is Duncan from Acrobat? Is that Duncan from Parting Shot? Yes, that would be Duncan from Parting Shot. And Darius Hawthorne, I mean, that's Conrad Harris, and he was in the Parting Shot. I'm like, yes, he was, And so it's fun to have people discover, the people, and if you look at A Matter of Time, everything that I've written that is not paranormal, you can trace back there. In Timing, Rand's lawyer is Rick Jenner, who is in A Matter of Time, right? So everybody sort of you can find the thread. Jared's book will link up Sam and Dante and and everybody into that one piece, so that you'll see it all fall underneath that same umbrella. And once I get the books I'm working on done, then I can start on and finish up my Marshall series, because I have Eli's book to write and then Callahan and Rediker's book to write, so it should round it out.
I'm super excited for those. You have no idea. But so like we kind of talked about like how you keep the familiarity, especially like kind of like, like low-key rewarding your like long-term readers with like these appearances from characters that they've loved and kind of feeling like they're revisiting old friends. But with your Taurus series, every book takes place in a different setting, right? Like, because they go out into the field, and like, is that more fun to like be able to be like, oh yay, now I get to step out of that world a little bit, somewhat related, but like step out of it into like new locations with different vibes and atmospheres?
Yeah, see, and that is fun. I as a rule, I prefer to write, as you know, relationships that span books, right? So A Matter of Time, the whole writing a new couple each time to me is okay. but I prefer to write the same couple. Like, with House of Madoc, I have Jason and Varick, and Jason and Varick will go through 3 books. There's not going to be a book from somebody else's POV. And Jin and Logan, I think, Doman's book was very difficult for me to write, the 4th book, because it was very difficult to write, and I shouldn't have done it that way, And so the 5th book is finally back to Jin and Logan. I prefer to write the long-term couples, but it is fun to write every now and then couples that go the new couple in the new setting. With Sean Benji's book, I had, because all of the fixers up to that point, the 3 books previous, and you historically understand within that series and within their time frames within the story that most of the fixers, they go out and they don't come back. They stay wherever they were. They fall in love, and that's what happens. And that's why the running joke is, does Jared Coulter know he's running, the love connection over here, and he doesn't take kindly to that. But that's why in Sean Benji's book, Shaw comes back. So now, he brings Benji back to Chicago. I think it's fun. It's fun to write the new dynamics. I do a lot of research on wherever I'm putting a book. I was lucky in the 3rd one because I had family that live in Santa Barbara. So so I was lucky there. I know, and I hear them complain about, that, you could smell pot all the time. It's horrible, so I can add those in the books, those little things, and I got a note from a reader who's like, yeah, I live there, and yeah, it reeks, and I'm like, so that's nice to hear, so it's fun to do all the different places, when I sent Jin to Mongolia, you should see the books on Mongolia I still own over here. I have how to say good morning in, Mongolian. I got the book, so there's a lot of research that goes into that. So that part is fun. The tabs on the top of my thing change all the time, on the top of my computer. But yeah, it is fun to have them go to a different place. And so it's always like the first chapter is wherever they're going. And then, from chapter 2 to whatever, they're in this new place, dealing with whatever it is. So that part is fun.
And I love that, because it's like you start with the familiarity, and then they're kind of like a little bit of a fish out of water. They're like, what am I even doing here? Jared is crazy. Should I like, must I stay? Like, can I come home now? I've done my job. And he's like, no, you're staying there until you stay there forever.
You stay. Yeah, that's Jared's thing. You stay until it's better, right? You can't come home until you've left the situation better than you found it. And so however long that takes, you're there until that happens. So yeah, that's his syzygy, right? I had to figure out how to say that word. I love details, as you can tell from my books. I like to say, the wall of tapestries has this on it, or, these paintings, or these carpeting, so that as a reader, and if you want to look it up. But if you don't, at least you have the details and you can like feel the scope of it. I think that's so important.
Yeah, that's ambiance.
I don't want to shortchange the reader. And I know sometimes it's like too much details. I was doing the room, the ballroom of the in the second House of Madoc book, and my editor was like, no, I can't. She's like, no, we have to move this story forward. No more, champagne goblets, no more. Just get it out of there. And I realized sometimes I can wax on a little too long, so I need to be careful. But I still feel like, so that what it looks like, so when he's running downstairs, that the walls were not just walls, but they're so old that they're like covered in wet moss and stuff. I think that's important, so.
I think it also like kind of shows what's important to the characters. You know,
Yes,
like
exactly.
in the launch series, and he's like, and Linus is like, it's and he's like very fastidious about all the furniture, like it's his own furniture. And the entire time he's like, no, don't mess with the furniture. Don't do this. Don't misname it. And like everybody's like, sir, please calm down. And he's like, no, it's important. The details matter. And like that's very much who he is as a character.
See, it is important, you know. It's like, you know, like when you know, they're standing there, you know, when Quaid and Armand are standing there. Did you know that's a banker's chair? Did you know it's a banker's chair? I didn't know it was a banker's chair. Linus knows, and Linus also knows if it's 2 centimeters off from where it was supposed to be. And again, for the reader, um, I don't like big, gigantic exposition dumps, you know. So I try and make information, you know, back and forth so that you have 2 characters talking if you can. Miro's backstory in the first book, I originally had it in I want to say in the second chapter, and it was just this big boggy, you know, this huge amount of information, and my editor was like, no, that's the you're keeping the reader from getting to where they want to go. So if you're blocking the reader from where they want to go, and that's how I always think about it now, am I keeping you from seeing something that you want to see? Where if I have it be in the hospital when he's convalescing and he's telling you about, you know, when the women come in to see him, when he's talking about, oh, that's the trigger, you know, when he met them and what happened to him, that's organically where that should go. So you have to always think, am I getting in the way of the reader? And that's what I always try to do. If I'm reading this, do I want to read all this exposition piece that you have in here? I probably don't. I probably want to get to where I want to go. And once I know everybody's together, then I can, you know, then I'm interested in this, then I'm invested in this.
Oh yes, I love the fact that you like rework everything back. Like when you're like, oh, don't delete. I always tell my authors like, don't delete anything. Everything can be reworked into a better place, like in the story, and kind of like just shifting things around doesn't mean like you have to delete something. And I think when you delete things, you lose the magic there. It's just like finding the perfect slot where it fits in.
I agree. I think if you've written something, you know, I'll do that sometimes. I'll wake up the next morning and realize I've gone off on a tangent. You know, wherever this was, it's now over here, and so clearly that's not what I wanted. But I can, maybe this piece that you wrote doesn't even fit in this book. Maybe it's not even for this book, and so it just sort of stays with the title, and I put it wherever it's going to go. And I found that some of those things work in a newsletter, you know, for goodness sakes. Um, you know, uh, it's interesting, you know, about the do not delete, because a lot of people are like, oh no, you just kill it. And I've asked them, what happened to this part? Oh, it was no good, I deleted it. I'm like, oh. But it was, you know, it was so good, you know. Don't, like you just said, you shouldn't delete it, you know. I mean, unless it's really horrible. You know, and you went to a really dark place that you didn't mean to go. But other than that, yeah, you should keep everything, because you never know if it can be put someplace else or put in a different even book, you know. So I agree with you 100%. I don't do external, you know, where the characters are apart really well. I do better when they're together, and then you can have the banter back and forth, you know. And then you have people, a lot of people complain and they say there's too many characters in Mary Calmay books. There's too many people for me to keep track of. There's too many people. Um, Terry Michaels has this thing where she says it's your characters are like a house. You know, if you think about the, you know, the base of a house, do you have enough people to hold it up? If you only have one person, you can't hold up the house. So I always try and think of, where are the rest of these people? Like she always says, when she's editing, she says, where are these girls' friends? Does this girl have a friend? Does she have a mother? Does she have a father? Where are these people? And so I try and make sure that my characters all have these supporting people in their life. And sometimes I make them a little too interesting, and then I get asked for a book about them, and I never even thought about that in a billion gajillion years. But that's okay too. I liked a lot of people because I think in our lives, with normal people's lives, even if you're a hermit like you and me, you still have they're still friends. There's still this nurturing support system. Even if you don't see them all the time, you still talk to people, and I think that that's important to have in your books as well.
That's like one of the things I love about Miro's relationship with his friend group is that they don't have to see each other every day. And like the fact that like you're like, oh yeah, we called, it's been a few months since we last talked on the phone, but like, we check in with each other and we keep each other updated. And like that was like really beautiful, because I think a lot of time when people think, oh, support system, it has to be like friends who are like in the same town, go to coffee regularly, and then you get those coffee shop scenes where you're just like, okay, let's move on. And I think it's like a deeper level of friendship almost. It's because like it's that adult level friendship where it's like we don't always have time to like stop everything we're doing and spend time together. But when things matter, like all of them show up, and all of them show up like really angry. So like, who am I gonna have to get a better like room for you in the hospital? Like, where's your doctor? Because I need to make sure he's not messing things up and everything. And like they were so involved, so it didn't even matter that it had been a couple of months since he last talked to them.
Oh, absolutely. And I, it's like it's the same with like Sam and Jory, whenever, not Sam and Jory, Dane and Jory. So whenever Jory talks to Dane, there's never this, hey, how are you? Or hello. It's just, they start, Dane just, Jory picks up the phone, and Dane just starts talking to him. So it's like this continuous loop, of conversation. And I think that's how it is. When my grandmother was alive, whenever she called me, I'd say, yes, dear. And she'd start, it was never, how are you? Hello, or whatever. She'd just start talking to me, you won't believe what happened yesterday, and she would begin. And I think like with my friends, it's always like, let me tell you, so I think I wanted to make sure that Miro had those kind of real friends,
The deep, everlasting, like long life type. The type that steal your dog.
Yeah.
Who tried to steal poor Chicky away from Ian. And Ian is like so kind of like resigned. He's like, let them take him for the weekend or something. Maybe it's okay.
Yeah. It's funny because when I put out the second book, I want to think maybe it was either the second or third book in my Facebook group. My friend Brock made me a next door thing, so so it looked just like an actual next door, communication. It was like, there's a wolf in the neighborhood, and then the next lady says, that's not a wolf, that's just Chicky, and the next lady says, well, I don't want them to eat my corkies, and then the next guy says, what the F is a corky? So it's like actual next door, stuff. And it was really fun. And I have some shorts in my group, where Miro sent a big package, a care package to to his friend, and she got sparkly pens, and she got some food, and so I try and keep those those little things going in that, like you said, in that same timeline, and some people told me, oh, the newsletters, because they're happening in real time and they're dealing with COVID, I really couldn't deal with that, so I stopped reading them. And that's okay. I understand that, you know what I mean? But a matter of time, and the Marshalls are set in the real world. So there is the COVID situation that's going on there. So with Taurus, I sort of, if you look at the time frame where it is, it sort of stopped in February, and then Loughran's book sort of came around the end of it. But I don't really mention COVID in the Taurus series, but I will have to in Jared's book, so that we'll get, because it's going to cross with Sam and everybody else. It's real world. So
I like that. I did I was gonna ask you, like, I noticed the shift in the newsletter from kind of like advice column to like monthly check-ins with the character, and yeah. And I was like, oh, why did you do that shift? Was the advice?
I tried to do the question and the answers for a long time, and that was fun to do too. But all the comments I got, and every time I put out a newsletter, I get lovely emails, and they were all, oh, I like those are fun, but I really prefer the check-ins. I really like the stories. I really want to know what's going on with this family. I love this family so much. And there's only so many times that Sam can say the same thing, because he's not going to change, head on a swivel, the things he says, inspect what you expect, these gems that come out of his mouth, so he's not, Sam has grown as a character. He has changed greatly, being a father, being a husband. There's been a lot of good changes in him, but the core is not changing.
Which is like those earlier newsletters, like the column ones. I loved how it was almost like Jory's there trying to give very diplomatic answers and being like very respectful, like, this is what I would do, but if you want to do something different, that's okay. Meanwhile, Sam was like, no, just don't do it, or like, do this instead. Like, he was very like, he's not messing around there. He's not,
Jory's like, well, when you're going to date, you probably want to think about how mature your child is. Sam's like 16 for girls and boys. If if you're going to drive, they have to drive with people. There's an amount of people that there has to be there, for them to go out on a date. This is so, yes, fixed ideas about things, extremely fixed ideas about things.
I love that. And he doesn't there's no any self-consciousness there. He's just like, this is how it is. Take it or leave it.
I always think that, Jory is just gray, right? There's all this gray. Sam is black and white, and that's it. You're either good or bad, wrong or right. And that would drive, I get a lot of lovely letters. Oh, I love Sam. I love him so much. Not that I'd ever want to live with him, but he's lovely. Of course you wouldn't want to live with Sam Cage. Not crazy. That's so much work,
But that's why him and Jory make a good match, because Jory is also a lot of work in his own way, right? So the two of them kind of they know who else would we can't be with any other person because nobody else would take us. And I think Aaron reached that point where he's like, damn, Jory, you were a lot of work. And I'm like, okay with Duncan, I'm happy where I'm at now.
That's why whenever people, I've had comments before and people say, oh, Stefan from Timing is just like Jory. And I'm like, if you think about it, would Jory put up with Rand? No. And you have to think, no. Could Stefan even have dealt with Sam for a hot second? No. So how can you say that it's the same kind of character? I think sometimes when people say the books are all the same, it's because my voice is the same. I'm writing in first person, but if you really think about it and you try and move characters around, it doesn't really work. I love to think about different characters moving around. It's my favorite exercise in college is like, which I put in Acrobat, if you move people, like if you put Othello and Hamlet and Othello, right? Othello would have figured out, Othello would have killed, Claudius in Act One. No tragedy. Everything would have been fine, and Hamlet would have got down to the nitty gritty and figured out the mystery and figured it, and nobody would have died either, So it's like, it's really fun to think about people in different situations and stuff. So.
Yeah, and I always think about story as testing a particular character and their personality and everything that makes them them across a set and experiences. So not everybody's going to react the same way to certain situations or accept certain things being done to them. So like when he's like, yeah, they would have killed each other within a week. Like you couldn't have had a crossover between the two of them because he would have been like, you know what? I am going back to my city and you can stay there by yourself. Bye, peace out. And like, I mean, he nearly did leave Rand. Like, so,
Yeah, and there's no way Steph would have been like, no.
And like Rand knows it on some level. He's like, I know I'm so difficult to deal with. It's like, how can I make sure you don't leave?
Yeah. That's right. So that part is really fun for me. I enjoy putting people together that could not deal with. It has to only be them. It's like I've thought about writing like a threesome. I've thought about writing a character who cheats and then who comes back and who's forgiven. But it's just not me. I couldn't write I couldn't write a cheater because then that sort of is cheating on the whole idea of the love, and that would just be too. I couldn't imagine. I mean, especially in the shifter stories, there's no possible way. but even the years ago, I had an editor when I wrote Bulletproof. She said the scene where Sam and Jory were in the bathroom. She's like, "Don't you think Sam should use a condom?" And I said, "Why on earth would Sam use a condom?" And we had this whole email exchange. And she's like, "Well, he's been away for, I forget, 4 months or 6 months." She's like, "From Jory, and I think Jory would want him to use one." I'm like, okay. What you're implying is that Sam Cage would cheat on Jory. This is what you're implying. And that is not possible because he's made loyal. And that doesn't happen in a merry world. That could never happen. And it's just not the character I've created. And I understand you haven't, you're coming in fresh and you didn't read A Matter of Time. But it's not possible. And I stuck to my guns, and my head editor, she's like, no condom, and so it was, but it made me think about, the perception of if you're apart for a certain amount of time and you're not married, does that immediate, or they were married at that point, but it's like, is that the perception? And I was like, no, that can't happen in a Mary book, that just can't happen. So.
No, that scene and him cheating would have been just like so stressful. It's just, I think Sam is just too loyal, but also I think a lot of your like romantic relationships are based significantly on trust, right? And I think because they have to trust each other, like I can be as crazy as my crazy gets, and I trust that you will still be here at the end of the day. Like that level of trust where you're just like, I'm going to show you all my crazy. I think that's like where the loyalty really is. So yeah, the cheating would definitely kind of breach that trust. So if I can't trust you to, respect my body, then how can I trust you when you say you're accepting of my crazy either?
Yeah, it's all those little things. I when I was much younger, I remember seeing people, especially in the airport, when you've got nothing else to do really but look at people. And you'd see these couples, and they lean forward and they touch each other, or they, put a hand on a leg, or, just lean and touch a shoulder. And there's this sort of communion of, we're together, you belong to me. And so, yes, of course, I'm gonna, touch you or lean on you, or pat you to look at something or whatever. And I really love those things. And I try to put those, in my books, so that, like, when Miro leans forward and he puts his hand on Ian's thigh to just keep his balance as he's doing something. I just love those small little moments, and I think that's why it's really hard for me to imagine like a threesome. And I know that some excellent writers who could do those things, but for me, it's just that core two people together, that works for me. But
It's so beautiful and I love it. It's so amazing. But like I know, like in one of your books, you do talk about cheating and like the ramifications of it on the relationship, and kind of the breach of trust is like, yes, I could take them back, but I would always be wondering, and that's not like, I don't want to put myself in that situation, right? And I think what was interesting there is that like he had made the decision in his head, like it's never going to happen, but he had not closed that door in person. And then by the time he realizes he's like starting to fall for somebody new, right? He's like, oh, it was never going to work out. Like this whole, like we're taking a break thing was just a farce, because like in my mind, like that was long over. And I'm almost like giving him false hope by kind of like saying that we're having like
and I got a lot of and a lot of people, it's not Floodgates is not a lot of people's favorite book because of that. They felt that there was too much screen time for the ex, but my thought in that process was to work through that. You know what I mean? To work through that whole arc of, is it, where am I in this process? And like you said, oops, I gotta close that door. I better close that door since my heart's already over here, So I think I thought that was important. Sometimes I have to be careful because and I've made mistakes, in books where it's gone too long. So I have to be careful of where the working out starts butting up against the romance. You have to be careful because it's that core a romance, so you have to be conscious of that.
Yes. I think what made it work for me in Floodgates was the fact that it was also tied to his internal character arc, where he was also not very like, he had like an idea of himself that was very different from how everybody else perceived him, right? So he was like, oh my God, I find it really interesting that when people see with him, like him with me, it's like his shininess rubs off on me, and like I get to be in like that secondary glow. So maybe like part of why he hadn't quite closed the door on it is like he would be giving that up. But as like the story progresses and he kind of grows into like the way his brothers react to him, and they're like, oh my God, mom loved you the most, and like all of these like reaffirming things throughout the series, he starts to like believe it, like I do deserve better than him, and I am a bomb person myself, like I don't need to like validate myself through being with him. And then like, yeah, so I think that's like, for me, it made sense that he would kind of like not want to close the door on it fully, because on some level, it's like he didn't want to be alone, because like he didn't know how to function that way.
Right. See, but you're a very insightful reader, so
it's part of my job, as an editor. But like, I didn't go to school for it, and like part of the thing, it's I like process and seeing how things like come together and everything. So like, yeah. I never thought like, oh yeah, the ex, why can't we get rid of him? I did think he should have been the one hit with the bat. Like I was like, why are you going after everybody else but him? Like, Why don't you run him over? But that aside, I mean, like, that did its job, obviously. If I hated him, and I was supposed to hate him, and like by that time, like they're having that argument in the kitchen, and he's like, you know, like giving them the hot and cold treatment, and I'm like, yeah, cancel him.
Yeah, but I loved writing all of the family in that book. You know, that goes back to that. You know, all the other characters. You know, because he's got the one brother who's the DEA agent, very serious. He's got the other brother who's an actor, who's a little flaky. Like, who is that again? What is that again? You know, his brother's like, I told you we should have brought flashcards. You know what I mean? It's,
yeah, and be like, why did they ice the bunny?
What happens to the rabbit? They killed the rabbit. Why'd they kill the rabbit? You know, so it goes on to that.
What did it ever do to him?
You know, and the whole thing with when they, you know, and his brother brought him up coffee, and they're all trading coffee cups in the bedroom. I enjoy writing those things. You know, it's really fun for me. When you read things and you're like, oh, somebody will say, oh, he was just, you know, he was so funny. That character was so funny. I laughed all the time. But then you never see anything in the book that's really funny, or is, you know, and so what you're getting is this sort, you know, the telling and the not the showing, you know. So I think it's important. I mean, I'm not a comedic writer, you know, but I think that when you can have some, you know, funny parts in the, you know, in the books, that's, you know, like Shaw going out to take care of the paranormal investigator in you know, in this, in book 4, you know, and, you know, in the middle of this, he's like, you know, I got to call my boss about this wackadoodle assignment, you know, you know, and then he thinks that you're smoking at the dispensary, and you know, he's like, stoned paranormal investigators, I need to go home now. You know, that's fun to write, you know.
Yeah, Lochran and his mom, the whole time he's like, I love you, lady, but you're so weird.
Because she's a space cadet, you know, she is. I mean, she's a lovely woman, but she's been married 7 times, you know, and you know, nothing wrong with people who get married a lot, but I'm just saying, you know, that she changes them like she changes her clothes. And so, you know, which of course has given him a skewed idea about love and romance, you know, so all those things, you know, your parents do, your friends do, and everything else. I think it's important to see those consequences onto the character, you know. So
I love that. But thank you so much for
oh no, it was my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. This was awesome.
If you enjoyed this guest episode, make sure you subscribe to Path to Print on your podcast streamer of choice. Did you know that you can watch all guest episodes on my YouTube channel? As always, you can always find a transcript of this episode complete with links to all the books and things mentioned, and throw your 2 cents into the conversation by visiting the link in the show notes. If you'd like to be a part of the Ribbon Marker community over on my website and join in on the conversation on this subject, be sure to stop by my website at theribbonmarker.com. You can also join the conversation on social media using the hashtag Convos on Craft and hashtag Path to Print Pod. If you're loving Path to Print and want to do something to support the podcast, it always means a lot when you leave a rating or review on your site of choice. You can also leave me a voice message on Anchor at anchor.fm/Kate-Marupe/message. Many thanks to my lovelies who support Path to Print on Ko-fi. Each donation helps me create more content that helps authors like you grow outside the traditional query, acquire, revise structures of the publishing industry. If you're interested in donating to Path to Print, you can do so at ko-fi.com/theribbonmarker. Thank you so much for listening to Path to Print, and be sure to check back in next week for a new blog episode.